Hey guys, today I'm going to be showing you my process of how I make lo-fi, chill hop, jazz hop beats. This is probably going to be the last thing that I ever do that is lo-fi, chill hop inspired. It's been fun, it's been great, but I want to explore some new musical horizons. So I guess you could say that this is my final lo-fi project. Don't say that. This isn't going to be anything too in-depth at all. This is going to be just me showing you my process of how I historically have created these sounds. I decided I would title it Café because that is Spanish for coffee, which I'm drinking right now. Got my lo-fi go juice right here. All right, now a good lo-fi tune is only as good as the beat. So up here in my DAW, I use Studio One. I have a beat queued up at 85 BPM 4/4. We're going to try and find a good kick here first to use. Subtle. Too subtle. It's not even a kick. I'm kind of liking this guy right here. Again, this is just my process of how I make a song. I don't presume to be right. This isn't the objective way of how you're supposed to do this. Here, let's go back to that sample section. Finding a hi-hat is always the trickiest part of this for me. They're so aggressive sometimes. Like that. I think I have another folder out here somewhere. If I was smart, I would import all these samples to Studio One. That one could work. So we're kind of developing the loop here. I kind of like this. It's got a certain bounce to it, you know? Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've also added some other percussive elements here. I added another hi-hat that's a little bit softer to kind of balance out the harshness of the one we have in there. I also added a little kind of rim thing to kind of add some reverb to the snare hits, and I also added a snare. So this is kind of what it sounds like. Not mixed. Not anything, but that's the feel, that's the bounce, and now we're gonna go and add some piano. Okay, so after much debating, I decided that we would do the song in the key of E flat. I just like playing an E flat on the piano, and here's the chord progression. It starts with an E flat 6/9, and then it goes to a B flat over E flat, which then goes to a C minor 11. Ooh, nice. Minor 7. We go back to the E flat 6/9 and a D flat 9. Nice, colorful. We go to an A flat major 7. And then we use something called tritone substitution right there. Essentially, we're adding kind of a non-diatonic chord to this progression. In this case, it's an E7 or F flat 7 because we're in the key of E flat. It adds a lot of tension there. It leads us back to want to get to that E flat, the tonic at the beginning of the next measure. Okay, so I'm sitting here editing this video and I realized that I'm not satisfied at all with that explanation I gave about tritone substitution. I also realized in planning out this portion of the video that E flat is potentially the worst key that you can explain tritone substitution in. You're dealing with notes like F flat, which is enharmonic to E, so you might think, why don't you just call it E? It's because the flat 2 in the key of E flat is F flat. Even though there's no F flat key on the keyboard, it still is a note in that key. It isn't a note, but at the same time, it is dependent on what key you're in. So for that reason, I'm going to explain tritone substitution in the key of C. No flats, no sharps. Well, you'll see. In music theory, there's a concept called a tritone. It's a very unstable sounding interval comprised of two notes, which are 6 semitones or 3 whole steps apart. In the key of C, a common tritone would be this B and this F natural. Now both of these appear as the 3rd and the 7th degrees of a G7 chord, which in the key of C is a 5/7. So you clearly hear that chord has a sense of direction. The B wants to resolve up to a C, the tonic, and that F wants to resolve down to the E, the 3rd. So what we do with tritone substitution is we take that chord and we move this whole chord a tritone away. So from G, if we move it 3 whole steps, 1, 2, 3, we replace the G7 with a D flat 7, which you'll notice keeps the same scale degrees of F and B. So it still has that same direction of wanting to resolve back to the tonic. So instead of going 1, 4, 5, 1, we can go 1 to 4 to flat 2 to 1. I really am a huge fan of using jazz chords with a lot of extensions when you're doing lo-fi hip-hop. It really adds a level of originality to it, and I don't know why, but it gives it a certain flair. Using sevenths, ninths, 11ths, I tend to use a lot of really colorful chords when I do that. Now, I don't own a bass, but I do have a guitar, and if we EQ it properly, it can kind of sound like a bass. I should have a bass, but I don't, so you work with what you have. Those who know me well know that I'm a total sucker for a shaker. I like to add a lot of shakers in most of my music. Alright, at this point I usually just kind of start messing around and just start adding random sounds. So I really like the sound of a kalimba. We're going to maybe see how that fits in here. Let's see what works. It's like throwing mud against a wall and just seeing what sticks. Alright, now I am a huge fan of the glockenspiel. I think pairing it with the kalimba works really well. In a lot of my stuff on my last album, Hampshire, you hear the kalimba and the glockenspiel kind of working in tandem. Oftentimes, I'll have the glockenspiel play like a harmony part. So we are going to have the glockenspiel, which sounds like that. We're going to have that play a harmony part here. So let's do it. Easy enough. Harmony. So now the song's kind of coming into shape more and more, and I don't really want it to sound like the same thing just on loop over and over, so we're going to pull back on some of the instrumentation now and add some guitar. Now, a technique that I really kind of like to do to highlight the kick, I like to take some nature kind of sound. So here's a thunderstorm. And then I do a thing called side chaining. So I come up here to a plugin, a compressor plugin, use my side chaining one that I have, and I side chain this to the kick. So what happens when I do that, you can hear it's going to duck out of the way when the kick happens. Hear how that is kind of ducking out of the way, right? I like to sidechain pianos and keyboards to the kick as well. One of the things I also like to do from a production standpoint is I like to add a little bit of lo-fi-ish warbling. So I use this plugin called the Isotope Vinyl. It gives it a little warble. You hear that? Without. With. So I like to use that on guitars. Okay, so I've gone in, I've added a little bit of vocals, I've done some slight tweaking on a few things, just some mixing things, and I think we're almost done here. The one more thing I'm going to do is, I was listening to it with headphones. Always do that when you're mixing and mastering. I feel like maybe the chords need to be highlighted a bit more, so I'm going to add just a little bit of raw piano to it. Alright, so I brought the camera over here so you guys can actually see me recording the piano part, so here's what that's going to sound like. All right, well, that's about it. My coffee's cold by now, so we're going to call that quits. I hope you enjoy. Here is the full version of Cafe.